They were the founders of a nation. Fearsome, dedicated soldiers who appeared at the dawn of Polish history and forged a kingdom from warring tribes. For over 400 years, the Piast dynasty ruled. They introduced Christianity, established the first kings, and laid the foundations of the Polish state. Figures like Mieszko I and Bolesław the Brave were not just rulers, they were nation builders. Yet, for 2 centuries, a single haunting question has echoed through the halls of academia. Where did the Piasts truly come from? Scholars argued fiercely. Were they native Slavic nobles rising from the local population? Were they displaced Moravian aristocrats seeking refuge and power? Or, as some dramatic theories proposed, were they Scandinavian warriors, Vikings who carved out a kingdom through conquest? The chronicles were ambiguous, the artifacts a confusing mix of cultures. The mystery endured, a frustrating blank space at the heart of Polish history. Until now. In recent years, researchers opened ancient crypts, extracted genetic material from thousand-year-old bones, and discovered something that no history book had ever revealed. The answer they found was so unexpected, it's forcing a complete re-evaluation of Poland's royal past. The mystery that stumped generations now has scientific proof. And that proof is about to change everything. The puzzle of the Piasts has always been one of overlapping clues. Weapon designs and jewelry from the early dynasty show both Slavic and Norse influences. Burial customs mix pagan traditions with new Christian rites. Historians were left with educated guesses, but no hard answers. That's where our story takes a turn. Because sometimes the truth isn't found in dusty chronicles. Sometimes it's buried in the earth, waiting for science to give it a voice. In 2023, a research team led by Professor Marek Figlarowicz at the Poznan University of Technology made a momentous decision. They would seek the truth inside the tombs of the royal family itself. Ancient crypts in Poznan Cathedral, sealed for centuries. Opening a medieval tomb is an act of immense precision and care. These were not just bones, they were a direct link to the past. The team recovered remains dating from the 11th to the 15th centuries, a perfect match for the timeline of the Piast dynasty. Genetic analysis quickly confirmed what they had hoped. Several of the individuals were close relatives. They were staring at family members, separated by generations. At a major scientific conference, Professor Figlarowicz made the definitive statement. There is no doubt we are dealing with genuine Piasts. This was authentication, but it wasn't the revelation. The real discovery, the one that would redraw the map of Polish origins, was still hidden away, locked away in the male line. Extracting DNA from thousand-year-old bones is a technical minefield. The risk of contamination from modern DNA is immense. Working in sterile labs, the Poznan group painstakingly isolated readable genetic material from 33 individuals believed to belong to the dynasty. They focused on the Y chromosome, the genetic marker passed exclusively from father to son, an unbroken chain across generations. As they analyzed the data from 30 male skeletons, an extraordinary pattern emerged. Almost all of them carried the exact same, exceptionally rare group of genetic variants. This was a signature, a genetic fingerprint proving an uninterrupted male lineage that ruled Poland for nearly 400 years, a remarkable feat in the turbulent world of medieval succession. But here is where the story pivots from confirmation to shock. This rare genetic variant is not commonly found in Poland. It's not common anywhere in Eastern Europe. Instead, this Y chromosome group's highest prevalence is in Western Europe. And the closest known ancient match to the Piast genetic profile belongs to an individual who lived in what is now Scotland around the 5th or 6th century, a Pict. The paternal line of Poland's founding dynasty, the men who defined the nation, carried a genetic marker that pointed directly back to the British Isles. Not Moravia, not Scandinavia, but from the vicinity of the North Atlantic. The 200-year debate had been focused on the wrong continent. The DNA had revealed an origin so unexpected it had never even been a theory.
Solving one mystery, however, often creates a new one. The DNA told us where the Piast's paternal line came from, but it couldn't tell us when they arrived. If this lineage arrived in Poland centuries before Mieszko I, the first documented ruler, it suggests a long, slow process of integration, a foreign family becoming local over generations, accumulating land, forging alliances, and rising to power from within. But if they arrived just a generation or two before Mieszko, it tells a different story entirely. One of a rapid, almost meteoric rise to prominence. An outsider family, catapulted to the throne by strategic marriage or extraordinary circumstance. The DNA provides the origin, but the timing remains tantalizingly open. And to understand the full picture, we have to look beyond the rulers to the population beneath the crown. While the royal DNA was revealing its secrets, a separate study was analyzing the genetics of ordinary people from Iron Age cemeteries across Poland. The results were just as revealing. The genetic makeup of common Poles living 2,000 years ago was remarkably similar to that of the subjects ruled by the early Piasts. The general population had deep local roots. They were part of a broader European gene pool, but their profile was stable. They were not replaced or displaced by their new rulers. This creates a stunning paradox. A ruling dynasty with a foreign, patrilineal origin governing an utterly local and long-established population? The Piasts may have been outsiders genetically, but they presided over a people who had been there for millennia. This wasn't a story of replacement, it was a story of governance. But how did this foreign-rooted dynasty consolidate so much power so quickly? The answer wasn't in their blood, but in the land itself. At the same time, another team of researchers was digging into a completely different kind of evidence. Ancient pollen trapped in the muddy sediments at the bottom of Lake Lednica, the cradle of the Piast realm. By analyzing these layers, they could read the environmental history of the region. They discovered something startling. Around the 9th century, right before the Piasts rose to power, the landscape underwent a violent transformation. The pollen record shows a sudden, dramatic collapse in forest trees like oak and lime. Simultaneously, there was a massive surge in cereal crops, pasture grasses, and charcoal. The researchers called it an ecological revolution. The forests were being systematically cleared with slash-and-burn agriculture. This wasn't for small-scale farming. The scale pointed to a centralized, organized effort. Why? To feed concentrated garrisons of professional soldiers. These soldiers were guarding the lucrative trade routes that passed through the region, routes carrying Baltic amber and human captives south toward the markets of the wider world. Control of this trade meant wealth. Wealth meant power. This is where the story comes together. Using this environmental data, complexity scientists built a mathematical model, a feedback loop that simulated the rise of the Piast state. It worked like this. Clearing forests produced more food. More food sustained a larger population. A larger population paid more tribute in silver to the ruling power. That silver funded more soldiers and the construction of more forts. More forts secured the trade routes, which brought in even more wealth. It was a self-reinforcing cycle of power. Each element fueled the next. Then something remarkable happened. The model, based purely on this economic and environmental data, accurately predicted a massive construction boom of fortifications around the year 990, an event confirmed by archaeological evidence. The model also predicted a darker outcome. If the flow of silver stopped, the entire system would collapse. And after 1070, that's exactly what happened. The pollen data shows forests beginning to recover. Archaeology reveals abandoned settlements. The boom was over. The Piasts, it turns out, didn't just conquer a kingdom, they expertly rode an economic wave, converting control of trade into the military and logistical power needed to build a state. The DNA told us where they came from. The ecology and economics told us how they succeeded.
So, how did a family with paternal roots in Scotland end up ruling Poland? The evidence points away from a bloody conquest and towards something far more common in medieval Europe: a marriage alliance. The noble networks of the era were incredibly mobile. Kings and princes married their sisters and daughters into foreign courts to seal treaties, secure trade, and forge alliances. Consider Świętoslava, the sister of King Bolesław the Brave. She married the kings of both Denmark and Sweden, and her descendants went on to rule England. One woman's life connected three major kingdoms. Perhaps a Scottish or British noble married into a rising Slavic family generations before Mieszko I. Their sons, carrying that unique paternal DNA, inherited power and influence within Poland. They weren't invaders, they were in-laws who became insiders. This theory fits the evidence perfectly. A foreign genetic marker in the rulers, but no disruption to the local population's gene pool. The great mystery of the Piast dynasty is no longer a complete unknown. We have actual proof, written in their DNA, of a paternal line tracing back to the British Isles. We have a compelling economic model for their incredible rise to power. But science rarely provides total closure. New questions have emerged. Will further DNA analysis pinpoint the origin more precisely than the vicinity of Scotland? How truly rare was this genetic marker among the common people? And what exactly caused the economic collapse after 1070 that ended the Piast's golden age? The story is not over. It's just becoming clearer, sample by sample. The Piasts were a dynasty with foreign roots who became fundamentally Polish. They governed a local people, built their power on a regional economy, and integrated so completely that their origins became a mystery. It forces us to ask a deeper question. In the fluid, interconnected world of medieval Europe, what did national origin truly mean for a dynasty? And ultimately, does it matter more where rulers came from or what they built? What do you think is more likely, a story of conquest or a strategic marriage that changed the course of history? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching.